Okay, imagine this number, $100,000. And that's not like a one-time thing.
Right.
That's the proposed annual fee per employee,
Yeah.
just to keep a specialized engineer or, a tech worker
Right.
on staff here in the U.S. if they need an H-1B visa.
Yeah, it's a huge shift. We're talking about a policy change that really targets the high-skill labor market, specifically through this H-1B visa program.
Exactly. It takes what was, I guess, a bureaucratic process and turns it into potentially a major financial headache, maybe even a disaster, for companies relying on this talent.
It really landed like a bombshell. When President Trump signed this proclamation, I think it was on a Friday, the whole conversation shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't just about immigration policy, it was about corporate finance, innovation strategy.
Right. So today, we're going to dive deep into this. We're using the Al Jazeera article that detailed the announcement as our main source here.
Mm-hmm.
And our mission really is to unpack it all. Not just that headline fee, but also, okay, what exactly is the H-1B visa? Why do tech companies especially depend on it so much?
And critically, what are the immediate effects, both economically and legally? Because there are big questions there, too, for companies, for the workers, for you trying to understand the landscape.
Yeah, it feels like this deep dive is really looking at a core tension, doesn't it? You've got the administration pushing this idea of, well, protectionism using a massive price tag.
Right, making it incredibly expensive to hire foreign talent.
But then you have industry experts, analysts, immediately sounding the alarm, warning that this could actually backfire, hurt U.S. innovation, drive talent elsewhere.
Precisely. It's setting up a fundamental conflict over how the U.S. sources high-skilled labor.
Okay, let's get into the specifics of the policy itself. That number that causes, the collective gasp. $100,000 per year per H-1B worker, paid by the sponsoring company.
And it wasn't announced in isolation either. At the same time, they rolled out this separate thing, the gold card visa.
Ah, yes, the $1 million green card, essentially.
Basically, individuals paying $1 million for permanent U.S. residency. So you see a pattern emerging, perhaps. High financial barriers.
Definitely a theme. But let's stick with the H-1B fee for now, because that's the one with the immediate broad impact on businesses.
And the details add another layer of shock. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick clarified that the fee wasn't just a one-off. He stated it would likely apply for each of the initial 3 years of the visa.
Each year. So
Yeah.
potentially $300,000 in fees alone for one employee over 3 years.
That's the implication. Now, he did add a caveat, saying the specifics were still being considered.
Uh-huh.
But the direction of travel seems pretty clear. The intention is to make hiring specialized foreign workers extremely, perhaps prohibitively expensive.
Right. That cost alone is staggering. It's more than many salaries for these roles.
So before we dig into the why and the what happens next, maybe let's just quickly define what this H-1B system is actually for. It's not just any work permit.
No, it's specifically for specialty occupations, right? Roles that require specialized knowledge.
Exactly. Think scientists, engineers, IT specialists, computer programmers, people with specific technical or theoretical expertise. It's designed to let U.S. companies bring in talent when they can't find it domestically.
And it's a temporary fix.
Initially for 3 years, yeah. And it can be extended up to 6 years in total. But the key thing, even before this massive fee, is how limited it is.
Right, the cap. There's a strict limit on how many are issued each year.
Yes, set back in 1990. Currently, it's capped at 85,000 visas per year. And how do they allocate them? A lottery.
A lottery. So it's already competitive, even without the huge cost.
Highly competitive. Demand massively outstrips that 85,000 supply. Companies already invest time and money just to get into the lottery, hoping to win a spot for a needed employee.
And the cost comparison is stark here. Under the, let's call it the old system, what were companies paying?
Well, there's an initial small fee, like $10, just to enter the lottery registration. Then it's selected. There are various filing fees, legal costs. It adds up to several $1,000s, maybe low 5 figures total in some cases.
Okay, so maybe $5,000, $10,000 total versus $100,000 per year.
It's not even in the same ballpark. It completely changes the calculation. This new fee isn't just tweaking the system, it's potentially transforming it from a tool many companies use to compete into something maybe only the absolute largest players can afford, or only for the most absolutely critical, cannot find anyone else roles.
It makes it highly, highly exclusive based purely on cost.
So that leads to the big question, why? Why make such a drastic change?
Let's look at the administration's rationale, what they've said publicly. President Trump put it pretty bluntly. The main thing is we're going to have great people coming in, and they're going to be paying.
Paying a lot.
A lot. And other officials echoed this. framing it as a way to ensure only workers with the most rarefied skill sets are sponsored. The implication being, maybe the old system was letting in people who weren't that specialized because it was cheaper.
Kind of a quality control through price, perhaps? But the core message, the political one, came through loud and clear from Commerce Secretary Lutnick.
Yeah, he didn't mince words. He said, if you're going to train somebody, you're going to train one of the recent graduates from one of the great universities across our land. Train Americans.
Yeah.
Stop bringing in people to take our jobs.
That's the protectionist argument laid bare. Use cost as a barrier to prioritize hiring American citizens.
And here's a really interesting claim he made. Lutnick asserted that he'd spoken to industry leaders and that all the big companies are on board with this $100,000 annual fee.
Which is surprising because the immediate reaction from analysts and many in the tech sector seemed to be the exact opposite.
Exactly. That's where it gets really fascinating, the supposed alignment versus the actual reaction.
Yeah.
What are the big concerns being raised?
Well, the warnings came fast. The first major point is that this acts as a huge disincentive. Why would the world's best and brightest choose the U.S. if coming here means their employer faces this massive annual fee, especially when other countries, Canada, parts of Europe, Singapore, are actively recruiting global talent?
Right. It makes the U.S. less attractive on the global stage for top-tier talent.
Potentially, yes. And the second big concern is about who bears the brunt of this cost. It's not likely to be equal.
You mean smaller companies versus the giants?
Precisely. A huge tech company like Google or Amazon might be able to absorb millions, even hundreds of millions, in new visa fees. It's painful, but maybe manageable. But think about a startup.
Yeah, a startup running lean, maybe relying on 2 or 3 absolutely critical engineers who happen to be foreign nationals on H-1Bs.
For them, an extra $100 or $200K per year could be crippling. It could literally put them out of business or force them to change their hiring strategy entirely. It creates a massive competitive disadvantage for smaller, often more innovative firms.
And then there's the bigger picture, the sort of geopolitical angle.
That's maybe the most serious warning. The risk that this policy, by making U.S.-based R&D much more expensive for roles filled by foreign experts, could push companies to move that high-value work offshore.
Especially concerning in fields like artificial intelligence.
Exactly. The U.S. is in this high-stakes innovation race, particularly with China and AI. If this policy makes it harder or more expensive to keep top AI talent in the U.S., does that inadvertently harm America's position in that race?
It's a huge strategic risk. There was a quote from an e-marketer analyst, Jeremy Goldman, that really summed it up. He said the U.S. risks taxing away its innovation edge, trading dynamism for short-sighted protectionism.
That captures the core counter-argument perfectly. You might think you're protecting domestic jobs, but you could be sacrificing the engine of future economic growth and technological leadership.
Okay, so if the industry is raising these alarms, despite the Commerce Secretary's claim, let's look at who is actually using the H-1B program right now. The data tells a story about who's going to pay this new bill.
Yeah, the numbers are quite revealing. If you look at the top companies receiving H-1B approvals last year, it reads like a who's who of the tech and consulting world.
Amazon was number 1.
By a significant margin. Over 10,000 visas approved for Amazon last year.
Wow. And if you apply that $100K annual fee, potentially over 3 years, that's approaching $1 billion in new costs just for Amazon.
Potentially, yes. It shows the scale we're talking about. Following Amazon were companies like Tata Consultancy Services, a big Indian IT firm, then Microsoft, Apple, Google.
So a mix of U.S. tech giants and major global IT service providers.
Exactly. It shows the breadth of reliance on the H-1B system. And looking at where the workers come from is also revealing.
Dominated by one country, I believe.
Overwhelmingly. India accounted for 71%, nearly 3/4 of all approved H-1B beneficiaries last year.
71%, that's huge.
It is. China was a distant second at around 11.7%. So any major change disproportionately impacts workers from India and the companies that recruit heavily from there.
And geographically within the U.S., where are these H-1B holders concentrated?
No surprise there. California, the heart of the tech industry.
Right. So Silicon Valley and other tech hubs in California are going to feel this financial pressure very directly, very quickly.
All this talk of massive new fees, potentially hundreds of millions or even billions across the economy, inevitably raises another critical question.
Legality. Can the government actually do this? Charge $100,000 a year for what is essentially processing paperwork.
That's the crux of the legal challenge highlighted by groups like the American Immigration Council. Historically, Congress has authorized government agencies to set fees, but the understanding was always that these fees should recover the cost of providing the service, in this case, adjudicating the visa application.
Okay, so processing the forms, doing background checks, whatever the administrative cost is, which is presumably nowhere near $100,000 per year.
Exactly. The actual cost is likely in the low thousands. Charging $100,000 looks less like cost recovery and much more like, well, revenue generation on a massive scale or a punitive tariff designed to deter usage.
And that might not be legally permissible based on how the fee-setting authority was granted by Congress.
That's the argument. Courts might see this as the executive branch overstepping its authority, essentially creating a new tax or a massive revenue stream without explicit congressional approval for that specific purpose.
So this adds another layer of chaos for companies, doesn't it? Not only are they facing potentially crippling costs, but there's also legal uncertainty about whether those costs will even stick.
Absolutely. It makes long-term planning incredibly difficult. Do you budget for this massive new expense, or do you wait and see if it gets struck down in court? That uncertainty itself can chill hiring and investment.
So let's try to synthesize this for you, the listener. We have this major policy shift, a huge new fee on H-1B visas. The stated goal is clear. Prioritize American workers, ensure only the absolute top-tier foreign talent comes in.
But the pushback is equally strong. Warnings about stifling innovation, hurting U.S. competitiveness, especially in critical fields like AI, disproportionately harming startups, and potentially just pushing jobs overseas rather than creating them here.
And hanging over all of it is this significant legal question about whether the fee itself is even lawful.
Right. It really moves the conversation beyond just immigration policy. This connects directly to fundamental economic strategy.
It feels like the core conflict boils down to this trade-off, domestic protectionism versus global talent acquisition. And this policy forces that trade-off into incredibly sharp relief with that $100,000 price tag.
Yeah, it's a very stark choice being presented. And the final provocative thought, maybe, is what does this signal long-term, beyond the immediate economic impact or the potential legal battles? What does it say about the U.S.'s vision for its role in the global innovation economy? Is it turning inward, prioritizing domestic labor at potentially any cost to its technological edge? Or is this a temporary measure that might be adjusted?
And how will U.S. companies, large and small, navigate this? What does it mean for the specialized workers themselves, who might now face a much more uncertain future in the U.S.?
Those are the big questions, I think. The legality, the economic fallout, and the long-term strategic implications. It's definitely something worth mulling over long after this deep dive ends.